As Ebele focused on her notes, Damien's behavior took a sinister turn. He cornered her abruptly, his towering presence making escape impossible. "If you ever tell anyone about this," he whispered threateningly, his voice laced with malice, "I'll make sure your family regrets it." Before Ebele could react, Damien crossed an unforgivable line, violating her trust and body in a horrifying instant.
Like and subscribe.
In the thriving town of Amaukwu, Mazi Okonkwo was a successful businessman who prided himself on providing the best for his family. He was very wealthy, ensuring that his wife, Neoma, and their only daughter, Ebele, never lacked anything. Neoma, too, was a good woman, diligent in running the household and supportive of her husband. However, beneath the surface of their picture-perfect family lay a flaw. While Mazi Okonkwo and Neoma provided Ebele with everything she could ask for, fine clothes, excellent schooling, and a comfortable home, they lacked one vital aspect of parenting: friendly care. Ebele had no room to enjoy a close, personal bond with her parents. Mazi Okonkwo was always busy with work, while Neoma, though attentive to Ebele's material needs, often dismissed deeper emotional conversations. Ebele longed for opportunities to express her feelings to her parents, but such moments were rare. Whenever she tried to open up, she was met with responses like, "You have everything you need, Ebele. What else could possibly be wrong?" This emotional distance left Ebele vulnerable. She kept most of her thoughts and fears to herself, including her struggles with mathematics in school. One day, Ebele came back from school with her poor mathematics result. She was afraid to show it to her parents. She finally summoned the courage to show it to them. Her father, Mazi Okonkwo, took one look at the paper and exploded with anger. "After all the sacrifices we make to send you to the best school in this community, this is what you bring back? A failure in mathematics," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the lavish living room. Ebele's mother, Neoma, tried to calm him down. "Okonkwo, shouting won't solve anything. Let's find a way to help her." "But how, Neoma? How will she pass her exams with results like these?" Mazi Okonkwo snapped, still glaring at the crumpled paper in his hand. Ebele stood silently, tears pooling in her eyes. She felt small and defeated, her father's words cutting through her like a knife. She wanted to explain, to tell them how hard she tried, but the words were stuck in her throat. That night, her parents had a long discussion. "Maybe she's struggling because she doesn't understand the basics," Neoma suggested. "We need to find a good tutor to help her." "You're right," Mazi Okonkwo agreed reluctantly. "We can't afford to let her fail. I'll ask around tomorrow and find someone competent." The next day, Ebele overheard her father speaking to a neighbor about a well-recommended mathematics tutor. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe things would get better. And so, Damien was recommended for the tutoring job. Mazi Okonkwo had a thorough discussion with him, expressing his concerns about Ebele's academic struggles. Damien assured him confidently, "Sir, before the end of the tutorial, Ebele will surely pick up." From the very first lesson, Damien showed remarkable dedication. He was punctual, patient, and skillful at breaking down complex problems into simpler concepts that Ebele could grasp. Slowly but surely, her grades began to improve. Her parents were overjoyed, praising Damien's efforts and showering him with gifts as a token of their gratitude. However, behind the closed doors of the study room, a darker side of Damien began to surface. At first, his actions seemed innocuous, a hand lingering on Ebele's shoulder a bit too long, or a compliment that felt uncomfortably personal. Though Ebele couldn't quite articulate why, these small gestures unsettled her. She told herself she was probably overthinking things, dismissing her instincts as paranoia. But Damien's behavior escalated subtly over time, crossing boundaries she didn't know how to confront. Ebele's discomfort grew, though she felt powerless to voice her concerns. Little did she realize, the seemingly perfect tutor her parents adored was hiding something far from admirable. One evening, when her parents were still at work, Ebele and Damien were alone in the house. The atmosphere in the study felt different that day, tense and suffocating. As Ebele focused on her notes, Damien's behavior took a sinister turn. He cornered her abruptly, his towering presence making escape impossible. "If you ever tell anyone about this," he whispered threateningly, his voice laced with malice, "I'll make sure your family regrets it." Before Ebele could react, Damien crossed an unforgivable line, violating her trust and body in a horrifying instant. Shaken and overwhelmed, Ebele sat frozen in the aftermath, tears streaming down her face as Damien calmly adjusted his demeanor, acting as if nothing had happened. The weight of his words, combined with her shock, left her paralyzed with fear. Terrified and confused, Ebele found herself ensnared in a web of manipulation and silence. She avoided her parents, convinced they wouldn't believe her or, worse, would blame her. Damien exploited her vulnerability, maintaining his facade of the perfect tutor in front of her unsuspecting parents. Trapped and alone, Ebele struggled to navigate the growing darkness in her life, each day eroding the once bright spark of her spirit. Ebele, despite her overwhelming fear, made several attempts to confide in her mother. Each time, she cautiously approached Neoma, searching for the right words and the perfect moment. But every attempt ended in disappointment as the atmosphere proved discouraging, leaving her feeling more isolated than ever. One afternoon, while Neoma was folding clothes in the living room, Ebele mustered up the courage to speak. "Mama," she began hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Ebele. What is it?" Neoma replied, not looking up from her task. Ebele fidgeted nervously, her heart pounding. I don't like my tutor." Neoma chuckled lightly, misinterpreting her daughter's tone as teenage stubbornness. "Don't be silly, Ebele. Damien is the best thing that has happened to your academics. Do you know how much your father pays him? You should be grateful." Her words felt like a slap to Ebele, silencing her immediately. But she tried again, determined to find a way to speak out. During dinner a few nights later, she began, "Mama, there's something I need to tell you about Damien." Before she could finish, Neoma interrupted with a bright smile. "Oh, that young man is a blessing. Look at how much your grades have improved. We're so lucky to have him." Ebele's heart sank, the weight of her mother's misplaced trust pressing down on her chest. It was clear Neoma idolized Damien, seeing him as the savior of her daughter's education. Unable to find the words to break through her mother's admiration, Ebele gave up trying altogether. Convinced no one would believe her, she bottled up her fear and pain, resigning herself to silence and the dark secret she carried alone. The isolation grew heavier, each day a reminder of her helplessness. She became a shadow of the girl she once was, her every thought consumed by the haunting presence of Damien and the suffocating fear of exposing the truth. Yet, the more she withdrew, the more the tension between her and her mother deepened. Ebele's heartache became her silent companion, one that no one seemed able or willing to see. As weeks turned into months, Ebele's demeanor took a drastic turn. The once bubbly and cheerful girl now appeared withdrawn, spending most of her time locked in her room. Her infectious laughter was replaced by an eerie silence, and her radiant smile became a distant memory. Ebele stopped confiding in her mother, Neoma, and began avoiding eye contact with her father, Mazi Okonkwo. One evening, Neoma approached her cautiously. "Ebele, is everything okay? You've been so quiet lately. Are the lessons too difficult?" "I'm fine, Mama," Ebele replied hastily, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Neoma sighed, deciding not to press further. She assumed her daughter's mood swings were just a phase of teenage stress, a natural part of growing up. Mazi Okonkwo, on the other hand, was too preoccupied with work to notice the shift in his daughter's behavior. Meanwhile, Damien's visits became more frequent, and with each one, Ebele grew increasingly broken and helpless. His presence loomed over her like a dark cloud, suffocating her spirit. She longed to tell someone, to escape the torment, but fear held her captive. The once vibrant girl was now a shadow of herself, her pain hidden behind a fragile facade. Damien's control over Ebele became more sinister with each passing day. He didn't just manipulate her, he instilled a deep, paralyzing fear. His threats grew darker, targeting not only her but her family as well. "You think your father's money can protect you?" he sneered one evening, his tone dripping with malice. "No one will believe you. And even if they do, I'll make sure you regret it." The weight of his words crushed Ebele, leaving her feeling trapped and powerless. Fear consumed her every thought, robbing her of peace. She tried to make excuses to avoid the lessons, hoping to escape his oppressive presence. However, her parents, unaware of the nightmare she was enduring, insisted she continue. "Damien is helping you so much," her father would say with pride. "We're lucky to have him." To Ebele, those words felt like a cruel twist of fate. One fateful morning, Ebele collapsed in the kitchen while helping her mother prepare breakfast. The clatter of falling utensils and the dull thud of her body hitting the floor sent shockwaves through the house. Neoma's scream pierced the air, thick with panic and desperation. "Marzi, come quickly," she cried, kneeling beside her daughter. Within moments, Marzi Okonkwo rushed in, his heart pounding. He scooped Ebele into his arms, her limp body feeling far too light, and carried her to the car without a word. At the hospital, time seemed to crawl. Neoma paced the waiting room, wringing her hands, while Marzi sat motionless, his face a mask of worry. The sterile smell of antiseptic only heightened their anxiety. When the doctor finally entered the room, his expression was somber. "Your daughter is 2 months pregnant," he said gently. The words hung in the air like a heavy stone, shattering their sense of normalcy. Marzi Okonkwo turned to Ebele, his hands shaking and his voice trembling with disbelief and fury. "Ebele," he demanded, "who is responsible for this?" Ebele's body trembled as tears streamed down her face. She hesitated, fear and shame warring within her. Finally, between gut-wrenching sobs, she revealed the horrifying truth: Damien's abuse, his threats, and her silent suffering. Neoma collapsed into a chair, her cries echoing through the room as she clutched her chest. "My God, how could this happen to my child?" she wailed. Marzi Okonkwo's rage erupted like a thunderstorm, his voice shaking the walls. "How could this happen under my roof?" he bellowed, pacing furiously. Their once stable world was now in ruins, the weight of Ebele's revelation leaving them shattered and reeling. The Okonkwo family wasted no time in reporting Damien to the authorities. Driven by fury and the need for justice, Marzi Okonkwo led the charge. When the police arrived at Damien's modest home, he met them with feigned ignorance, confidently denying the accusations. However, the revelation of Ebele's pregnancy and her detailed testimony painted a damning picture. As news of his arrest spread, other victims, emboldened by Ebele's courage, came forward with their own accounts of manipulation and abuse. The mounting evidence sealed Damien's fate. The trial that followed was excruciating for the Okonkwo family. Ebele, though terrified, bravely recounted her ordeal in court, her voice trembling as she relived the trauma. The courtroom, packed with community members, listened in stunned silence. Neoma and Marzi Okonkwo sat rigid, their hearts breaking with every word. Damien's carefully constructed facade of a respectable teacher shattered under the weight of the testimonies. One by one, other young girls stepped forward, their stories echoing Ebele's. The community, once blind to his true nature, recoiled in disgust as the extent of his crimes was laid bare. By the end of the trial, Damien was no longer seen as a trusted educator but as the monster he truly was. The news of Damien's heinous actions spread like wildfire through Amaukwu, leaving the community in shock and disbelief. Parents who had once admired him as a trusted mentor now questioned how they had failed to notice the warning signs. Conversations in markets, churches, and village squares revolved around the betrayal and the unimaginable harm he had caused. In response to the uproar, a town hall meeting was convened. Elders, community leaders, and parents gathered in the village square to address the issue. Chief Okafor, a respected elder, stood to speak, his face grave. "This is a lesson for all of us," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "We must never blindly trust anyone with our children, no matter how respectable they seem. Evil can hide behind even the most convincing smiles." The crowd murmured in agreement, many nodding solemnly. Parents began sharing their own fears and concerns, some admitting their regret at not being more attentive to their children's needs. They vowed to be more vigilant in the future, promising to listen more closely and create safe spaces where their children could speak freely. The tragedy became a turning point for Amaukwu, prompting a collective commitment to protect the village's most vulnerable members and never let such betrayal happen again. For Ebele, the road to recovery was long and painful. Her parents enrolled her in therapy and surrounded her with love and support. They also took a hard look at their own actions, realizing how they had unknowingly allowed danger into their home. Mazi Okonkwo often reflected on the signs he had missed. "I should have been more vigilant," he admitted one evening. "I trusted too easily." Neoma, too, felt a deep sense of guilt. She began encouraging other parents in Amaukwu to be more cautious. "Don't be blinded by appearances," she advised during a community meeting. "No matter how trustworthy someone seems, always keep an eye on your children. Ask questions. Listen to them. And most importantly, believe them." The tale of Damien and Ebele served as a wake-up call for the people of Amaukwu, shaking the community to its core. In response, schools and community leaders quickly organized workshops aimed at educating parents and children about the signs of abuse and the importance of speaking out. These efforts were part of a collective determination to ensure such a tragedy would never happen again. For Mazi Okonkwo and Neoma, the ordeal was a painful but powerful reminder of the importance of vigilance and open communication. They realized how crucial it was to truly listen to their children and pay attention to changes in their behavior. Thank you for watching. Tell us your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel Chukwudi Alolar Studio at Chukwudi Alolar.